this time the lights should not be too bright. There we go. Yeah! Hi there. Sorry this video is going up later than I intended. I've had to wait by the door for electricians to come in the last few days to fix the lights in the ceiling of my kitchen. It is a nightmare. You'll also notice there's a fan in the background because it's the hottest day ever in the world. I've got this portable thermostat and it's not completely accurate. It's like slightly off, but it said it was 40 degrees C at one point when I was in here. So basically I worked from not here for a while. I tried to get an air conditioner, but of course I went and everyone had already panic bought all of them. I put off panic buying things for a bit too long so it doesn't feel like I'm panicking, but that means that they're all gone because they've been panic bought. So that was great. Please excuse the horrible facial hair. Honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just letting it do what it wants. I tried shaving my head, but whenever I look down, I can see that tuft. Remind me not to look down while I'm making this. So this is part 3 of my retrospective on my old videos and kind of my life as I was making them. I've got my sparkling water here, but if I drink it, I'm going to get my mustache wet and everyone will laugh at me and my career will fall apart and I'll be doomed forever. That's genuinely how my mind works. I did that for a joke, but that probably made it worse. I hope I'm in focus. Here's a trick for people who want to think they're clever. Here's how you get focus on a good camera, right? You zoom all the way in, and then you get it so that it's in focus, because the zoomed in thing is easier to get in focus because it's closer, you know, and sharper. And then you zoom out, and then everything's in focus. The thing that you need is in focus. That doesn't work, though, if you don't have a parfocal lens. If it's not parfocal, then you just didn't get the focus in a very confident way, and now you're fucked. This lens is a Canon L series 24-105 f1.4. It is a very nice lens. It's almost parfocal. That's what people say. It's almost parfocal, which means if I'm out of focus, it is only my fault. There is no one else I can blame. I'm trying to find the best angle so that I can do hand motions, because I like to do that when I'm talking, when I'm standing up. I'm sure it'll be fine. I've been more out of focus before and somehow gotten away with it, so it should be all right. So when we last left off, I'd just done the Sarkeesian effect in Crisis. It was pretty good. It was fun to get back into it, and it was a good distraction from the horror that was my life at the time. And then I started talking to some grey bloke on Twitter, whose real name I've forgotten, but that's the name he uses on Twitter, so that's the name I'm going to use, who at the time was an editor and an animator for a YouTube channel about philosophy called The School of Life. The main guy behind it is a philosopher called Alain de Botton, who is really good at summarizing other ideas. If he has actual ideas of his own, I'm sorry, but I forgot what they were. And a lot of the videos on the channel are some quite simple but very nice animations, just going through the ideas as he's discussing them. And some grey bloke said, "Hey, you seem quite good at editing. I bet you could do some stuff for me for this. How about I basically subcontract you to do some of that editing?" And I was like, great, sounds fantastic. And the main one that I worked on, I only worked on like 2 or 3, and most of them I think my work got redone because it wasn't very good. But the main one I worked on was the one called Manners, the one about the history of manners. Some of the stuff I did was good. Most of it I got told to redo because the idea for how I was going to do it was ridiculous. I had like a whole 3D section where you kind of zoom in on a cave, and I'd made a fake 3D model in Adobe After Effects out of static planes. It was really ridiculous looking. At the time I was like, this is like a style, but it was really just horrible looking, and I've deliberately not kept any of that original version because it looks terrible. But eventually, over the course of the latter part of 2015, I scraped together enough of a sense that this could be a thing that I could do, that I began the process of quitting my job, where you give a month's notice and then they work the shit out of you, and you turn your van in and you can go and you no longer work for this horrible company. One of the reasons why I quit the tech job was because I was doing a lot of work in hospitals and pharmacies when the sections were closed down for the night. And because you were going where a lot of sick people congregate and inhaling a lot of dust from equipment that hadn't been touched since the 90s, I started to get what I think was some kind of asthma, where I would just be driving or doing something, and all of a sudden I would just start coughing uncontrollably, and I wouldn't be able to stop coughing, and I wouldn't be able to breathe just for like 10 or 20 seconds as the coughing was happening, and I would tense up and like I would start to tear up. It was always really horrifying. I remember it happened once when I was actually driving. One of the scariest moments of my life. I thought, I cannot continue to do this. But thankfully, when I quit the job, my breathing basically immediately got better. I was worried there would be some kind of long-term effect. And because I needed to save money and I was living in a tiny spare room for £550 a month, I moved to Reading. And I'd helped film a documentary for a friend of mine's band, and one of the bandmates, or a friend of the band, lived in this weird little house in Reading with a strange woman whose kids had just moved out for uni and was renting out each of the individual rooms. So the room that I'm in this next video is that room, and it was slightly larger than the other room, which was fantastic. The door didn't close properly. The lady who was doing this was eccentric. I remember distinctly almost tripping and falling down the stairs because she had propped up a book on crystal medicine on the staircase, so that was fun. And she had a bunch of pets, including like quite an old dog and several cats, although one of them had gone missing, and one of the cats was Cody, who is in the upcoming video. And Cody was great. He for some reason really liked me. I would wake up in the morning to him pushing the door open because it didn't shut with his face and letting himself in and getting on my bed and just like trying to get my attention. And if I pretended to be asleep long enough, he would do the thing where he would do that and his claw would come out and then he would just like tap me with his claw. It was really cute. It was really nice. I really loved Cody. And when I moved out, I almost stole him. The lady was very nice, but she was very into homeopathy. And she was using it as a form of medicine on herself and the pets. Some of them were quite sick. The dog was very old and was getting on and had a variety of problems. But Cody had a problem where he would have fits. He would sort of spin in a circle and urinate everywhere and rip a bunch of his fur out. And it was really scary, and he would do it a lot in my bedroom and specifically my bed. So I remember having to wash the sheets way more often than I normally would because the cat would just freak out and pee on them. I was really concerned about this cat. She started putting him on actual medicine and he seemed to get better. And I'm glad she did, because if she hadn't, I would have stolen that cat because I was so worried about him, and Cody was so nice to me, and I bet he would have been fine with being kidnapped. I remember to keep the door shut, I would have this little stack of books just to stop it from just blowing open during the night. But I used just enough books that if Cody wanted to come in, he could push it. And that was really great. I've never had a cat myself, but I feel like I have now. I have this very distinct memory of worrying that I'd walked into a weird domestic situation where I woke up to this very loud yelling and screaming. And it sounded like two people, a man and a woman, yelling at each other. A child was living in the house at the time, and I was really worried that this was going to become a situation where I might have to go down and see if the kid was okay, and potentially, like, I don't know, I really freaked out. And I went downstairs to see what was going on, prepared to get involved in what could be a fight, and the child was alone in the living room watching a Jacksepticeye video. Jacksepticeye is a really nice guy. I spent 5 minutes in an Uber with him once, which I paid for, and he seems very nice, but I do forever associate him with this moment of intense fear when he sounded like two people arguing. So the School of Life job was going pretty well, and eventually in 2016, quite a while after I did it, the manners video went up, and it's pretty good. Most of it, I think, is mine, and I'm proud of the work that went into it. However, there is a visual glitch that to my dying day I swear is not my fault. Here we are in the School of Life manners video, which I'm in the credits for, so you know it's me. There is a big problem at about 4 minutes and 43 seconds in, where just the word manners pops up for no reason.
In particular, men are being asked to behave with more decorum around women. And there's an
It's just for like one frame, it's some horrible bug. It looks like it was like in the old days of YouTube, you would have the thumbnail of the video pop up for a split second in the middle. It reminds me of that.
Press the punch button right as you're kneeling down after the jump in order to recover.
I have no idea what that's doing there. The project file was out of my hands for months before this ever went up. But it might be my fault, and I don't know, and I live with this forever. The most replayed section of the video by a huge margin is that, and a lot of the comments are just, hey, is there some kind of weird subliminal message at 4:43? Nobody. Everyone is talking about it, and they have been for years. Leave me alone. This is so embarrassing. I'm so mad. I don't think it's my fault. but I'm sorry. I basically figured that this School of Life stuff is going well. This is going to make for an interesting show reel. I have a bunch of other projects I've done, like the band documentary that I was just talking about that ended up never getting released, but I was really happy with, actually. I'd done a bunch of stuff. I could put together some kind of reel and maybe get editing jobs, maybe for other YouTubers, or doing something. I went to university to do English and film studies. This was technically the thing I wanted to do. I just hadn't really sat down and gone, how do I do this? And the tech thing I decided to do in my spare time had taken up all my time, and I just got completely distracted. So it was a wake-up call that this is what I liked doing and I could probably do it for a living. And I thought, while I'm looking for these things and need to come up with more material for this reel, I have this YouTube channel that a couple of people have seen. I should make things for it. And it occurred to me that the term measured response would be a really great name for a series of videos. Like, I could just go X, a measured response. I'd accidentally made a really nice naming scheme, and I should just cover more things along the same lines as that. And the big one that was really sticky in my craw was cultural Marxism. I had friends from high school who had fallen down this Facebook rabbit hole where, you know, they start talking about cultural Marxism all of a sudden one day because they read about it online, and they're in a bunch of Facebook groups that say immigrants are stealing their jobs. And I was, as you can hopefully tell, a pretty left-wing person with hopefully a decent understanding of history. I'd always had a lot of interest in how fascism happens. And I'm not like a scholar of history or anything. I definitely have missed huge chunks. You know, I know what the Munich Putsch is, but if I try and tell you anything about it, everything I say will probably be wrong. But Kulturbolschewismus, or however it's pronounced, I haven't tried to speak German for like 15 years, was a conspiracy theory from that period that had just been updated to the modern day by people who are descendants of the Nazis, ideologically speaking, and people were just letting them get away with it. And what was really infuriating but also fascinating about fascist beliefs is they know they are Nazis, they know they are fascists, but they also know that it looks bad to be a fascist Nazi. So they try to hide the connection to history, they change names, they don't bring up the more overtly evil side of the politics. They try and find like a normal way of saying it. Cultural Marxism is just a very slightly scrubbed away version of that. My favorite thing is that there is a fascist Wikipedia called Metapedia, which is literally like they've got the classical statue. Oh, I just love history, and also I'm very racist. They used to accurately describe cultural Marxism as a former Nazi idea, and changed that part because they knew it made the idea look bad and they wanted it to gain ground with normal people, and normal people think Nazis are bad. In the fanfiction community, when someone wants to sell something they've written as a book, they do what's called file the serial numbers off. They change the names, they change the setting so it becomes an original story in a new world, and then they can sell it as an independent work. And that's what Nazis have to do. They have to file the serial numbers off their Mein Kampf fanfiction. I was never the master of Marxism by any means, but I did happen to have a specific interest in Herbert Marcuse, who was actually in the Frankfurt School.
Self-inflicted masochism.
An interesting thinker because he basically was criticized by other Marxists for not being Marxist enough. One of the problems with how we talk about capitalism is that there is now a middle class, people with significantly more to lose than their chains. And like, oh, this is an important idea that needs to be explored if we're going to understand the economic system we live in. There's a quote from him that I find really good. I've written it down here. Not every problem someone has with his girlfriend is necessarily due to the capitalist mode of production. While I had met some people who could do with maybe a bit more of an understanding about the problems with capitalism, there's also quite a lot of people who could blame it a bit less for things. I really liked reading about that stuff. There's plenty of decent criticisms of Marcuse as well, but I remember there was a period when I found some of the stuff he'd written really valuable. So I took it personally when people blamed him for this evil Jewish plot. Like seeing someone repeat a Nazi playbook about Jews trying to destroy society while trying to talk about a guy whose work you've read who they haven't is so annoying. And I thought I could do a video about this. These people are quite easy to criticize because they're obviously wrong. They're easy to laugh at because they are the kind of people who believe these ideas, so they're not that bright, and they do obviously funny things. And David Serini has talked about cultural Marxism, so he can be in that as well. He can be like my anchor to the previous videos. He can be my rock. I can film myself watching and hopefully do an interesting reaction as well, and then put it all together, and maybe something cool will result from it. And this will give me something to do and an excuse to do more editing while I try and find other work. So I started doing it, and after doing all of that, I made this video. Let's watch it, shall we? Oh god, I have to find the file now. Once again, we're beginning with video game music. I felt like that might be important to the vibe. And one of the other things is the trigger warning. I put this at the beginning because I put it at the beginning of the other ones. I stopped doing these later on, but I think in these early videos, it's a good way of saying this video is against the things that you probably saw in the thumbnail or whatever. So it's probably useful just on getting everyone who the video is for on the same page. Kat has actually pointed out some comments from people saying, I saw Vaccines: A Measured Response and thought it was an anti-vax video, so I avoided it, so thank you for changing the title. And that's the kind of thing I was worried about. I think putting a trigger warning at the beginning of these videos helped make sure people know that they weren't watching the exact opposite of the thing that the video was.
Recently on the internet, I've seen a lot of people complaining about something called cultural Marxism. From the sounds of things, it's a really big deal.
I really like this opening. Here's this thing, here's why it's dumb, now let's look at some people talking about it. It's straight into the point in a way that I really want to make sure I learn this lesson. This is useful to me now, getting to go, yeah, you should do that. What I don't like is the audio quality. That room I was recording in with the blue door was very echoey, and I had to record in breaks because every 10 or 15 minutes, whenever anyone used the shower or flushed the toilet, and there were quite a lot of people in that building, the pipes would scream loudly for 20 full seconds. It was genuinely really hard to get to sleep sometimes. I don't know what was wrong with the pipes there. It was centralized in my room. I'm not sure what was happening. Thinking of myself as someone who does this for a living and who cares about audio quality and theoretically should know this stuff already, watching this back and hearing it, it's like, oh, this is not professional. Look at that hair, though. Like, what is that? You can already tell that I was doomed to end up like this. You could tell since I was, like, 16, to be honest. But with that length and with that, like, mullet... And that was how I grew it out when I was a teenager as well. I just did not give a shit. Like, I knew as a kid that I was going to go bald and I should just have fun with it. Just grow it out. Who cares? And I still don't really care about my beard either, as you can probably tell. This jacket I'm wearing, I stole from my old university's prop department. I just took a bunch of them to make a film that I never finished filming. And I just kept them forever, and I wore that then. And it looked really nice. I love how blue the door is. My light was operated by a pull cord, which feels like a very bathroom thing. I feel like maybe she had a spare one from when she was getting a bathroom done or something. But I love the blue door. Like, the whole aesthetic of that house was kind of beautiful and fun. But something I love about this shot, that is like a weird behind the scenes thing I've never talked about before, is in the original draft of this video I sent to a couple of friends, it looked like shit. I had filmed it at a slightly off angle, and there was way too much headroom, so it was like this. It was like that, and it just looked absolutely rubbish. I just hadn't thought about it at all. And like two people who actually know their stuff had both said, there's too much headroom in that shot. And I like reframed it at the last second, and that's why it looks a little bit better in the finished video. But to me, it's always been really funny that I had such horrible headroom. And I've continued to have that problem, and I've only gotten slightly better as time goes on. And also, I am out of focus too. Great, I've never learned. I really hope I'm in focus. I can't tell at this point.
What is a cultural Marxist?
The way he just cuts to this Window Movie Maker title while jamming out on his guitar, it is the most this guy doesn't know what he's doing vibe possible, and he's such a gift. I don't put that much like live reactions from when I was watching through the videos in the video because I worry that they feel forced, because you do overact when the camera's rolling, you know. But that I was really happy with because it was genuinely so funny to me in that moment. And it still is just so like, what is a cultural mark? It's great. The thing about rocking Mr. E, which was really fun, was you start to get the sense of when a person has some very bad conclusions, but got there for the weirdest possible reasons. Like, viscerally, from how he makes his videos, the editing choices he makes,
Cultural hegemony. After World War II, National Socialism,
and how he talks and how he addresses the camera, you can tell you are watching the most well orchestrated tip of a very deep iceberg. And not even in like a this guy's racist way, in a this guy is really weird kind of way. So while yes, he will have a video about he's just an ordinary guy who thinks it's weird that there's black stormtroopers and women Jedi in Star Wars, and if you dig even an inch deeper, you find him being interviewed on a white supremacist podcast. The thing about Rocking Mystery that is specifically magical is that on that podcast, he still looks like a weirdo.
What would you say to someone who said, like, gay marriage isn't harming anyone? What's your perspective on that?
Gay marriage in itself is saying that the marriage, what is marriage? Marriage has always been an extension of parenting. Once you disconnect parenting from marriage, it does become pointless. Straight people often get married and don't have children. Well, if I'm completely honest, I don't see the point in that. Marriage is going to end up being whatever these people, whatever the SJWs want it to be. We already have talk of polyamory, which is relationships with multiple people. Why can't they have children together? Of course, you can't have children with 4 people. Perhaps if we start having some kind of Frankenstein's Frankenstein-esque experimental system where you create children in labs, you could do it. But then it really starts to become a perversion of nature then.
Yeah.
Because there has to be limits.
The fucking Marxists are gonna gene splice super babies, and that would be too far. And that's why gay marriage is a slippery slope. There have to be limits.
There has to be limits.
And this is why I kind of love him. He is this burden that other white supremacists have to sort of deal with. Like, yeah, they have the same goals, so they get to sit in the tent with everyone else, but if anyone strikes up a conversation with them, they just have to nod their heads and privately think, oh no!
There has to be limits at the end of the day, for good reason that I hope I've explained somewhat here.
Yeah.
Rocking Mystery was never that popular, even with the people who agreed with him. He had about 10,000 subscribers when I covered him in 2015, and in 2022 he had just over 36,000. And normally I don't use people's lack of growth in subscribers as some kind of lesson that their videos are bad, but in the white supremacist community, if a guy doesn't have at least 100k subs at this point, this means that that community has chosen not to support him because he is embarrassing.
I can't tell if half of these are parodies anymore.
The Golden One and Davis Orini later in the video are all really good gets for if you want to talk about why these ideas are bad, because on the face of them, they are rubbish. Like, if these are the people who represent the idea, you've won. Like, I think I say it later in the video. The best way to damage an idea is to support it in an obviously bad way. And these people are just doing that. Like, I don't even really need to step in. I just need to put together a compilation of clips showing what they think, and they disprove themselves. Cultural Marxism was a great first video to make because I didn't have to do any of the work to be like, here's why this idea is wrong. 3 very independently weird people were being stupid for me. It was great.
Entitled that you're entitled to get exact fucking same thing as the winner.
A common problem with this video, though, I think, is I have a lot of text pop up that is very difficult to read, and then it goes away and there's maybe a joke there. I think when I wasn't confident enough to say the joke, I would use it as text and just hope like, oh, here's a little mini joke you can have if you want to read it, but if not, I didn't slow the pace of the video down to say it.
Oh, I'll get you yet, the family! Especially you, Kevin, you smug little bastard!
The way I say bastard there, like I become more English when I'm talking about Kevin. This is a fun stock photo, and stock photos of that, like, fake family from that shoot are all over the place. You see them everywhere.
Hey, folks.
So in the earlier videos, I talked about how I'd built up this soundscape of Grant Kirkhope, Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day music. Associating that with Davis Orini is just inherently really funny to me. This like, while he's fucking losing his mind is just like so funny. It's just such a great pairing, and I loved just reusing the music in this precise context. It was such a good like moment for it. I am basically congratulating myself on a joke I made like 8 years ago.
Fellow British youth, who is responsible for the ongoing attempt?
Fellow British youth. This guy was my age. He was in his 20s. He's not a youth. Just has a baby face. And then we have the BNP youth thing, which I think was a good way of bringing it all together. Like, oh, here's my conclusion. Here is an example of actual far-right people saying this idea in an obviously Nazi-ish way where they bring up Jewish people, the heartless Zionists. Here is how all of these ideas coalesce. I can definitively prove this is a Nazi idea, and these people are just filing the serial numbers off while being extremely weird. I win. This kind of brings it all home. But this guy is more of a story for this guy. You're going to find out very soon.
Taking over the world by not having sex with me when I asked them nicely and hanging out with Kevin. I'll put the game...
I forgot that I brought Kevin back up. I'm really happy with that.
The cultural Marxists who infest our teaching establishment.
I love that I'm clearly obsessed with the fact that these people are reading a script, because I'm not. I wouldn't do that. I'm a good performer. God, this is... The production value of this BNP Youth video is appalling. I mean, I can forgive the fascism, but this green screen, come on! An important thing that I just barely bring up and would have fleshed out more if I'd made it now is cultural Marxism really did come back mostly because of Anders Breivik. It was a huge part of his manifesto, and like after that, cultural Marxism came back as an argument, and that itself is like, oh, this is obviously a fucking horrible idea. It came back because a Nazi who killed a bunch of people wrote about it. That should be it for that idea. People should be able to put it to bed immediately. But no, it continues to gain ground because they file the serial numbers off. People don't recognize it. And I think if it was me now, I would try harder to be like, this is obviously far-right people trying to pretend this idea is normal, and it's really not. Like, I'd have hammered that a bit more. But at the same time, I think that isn't as necessary. I would probably do that closer to the end, like I do a little bit here, because these guys make the point for me by making the idea look horrible before you point out that it's a Nazi idea. It's already really dumb just from how these guys explain it and rebutting them. And doing that is more important than saying, you know, a Nazi thought of this, right? Because they're going to deny it or deflect. That's better as like a thing to point out for people who are interested and explaining it. But what you really need to do is debunk the idea immediately by pointing out how fucking smashed these people's brains are.
So if you hear someone saying cultural Marxism...
I am so out of focus in that shot.
Stop recording. Great.
And that really did happen. I forget why the camera shut off. I think it ran out of batteries, which I've got 77 minutes left of this. I was recording the audio separately and had to sync it in post because I had a Blue Yeti on the table, like it was like just off screen. But yeah, it made for a really funny ending. I'm glad it did. I don't know what I would have put there if it hadn't.
If that's how you pronounce.
And that's Cody, my friend, who was just hanging out with me. And I remember I wanted him to get up, and he wouldn't. I love Cody so much that he just kind of wanted to hang out. He didn't want to go. He sat back down. We just hung out for a bit. It was the best. And just off to the side is the bowl that I keep my keys in, because it's an easy place to remember where your keys are, because I would forget where my keys were if I didn't put them in an obvious place. I realize now that the term key bowl has a specific meaning, and I remember this is back when I had like 2 patrons. And here we are years later, and I'm still giving people mediocre bonus content for giving me $2. Which, thank you very much, by the way. What a great end card as well. It's just, here's some text. I love that it looks like, oh, it's a joke, look how little effort he put in. But actually, I just didn't know how to end the video. I was still figuring all this out. So that was cool. So what happened next? First of all, let's talk about Rocking Mr. E. Rocking Mr. E continued to make videos about all kinds of things. More cultural Marxism stuff, more homosexual agenda stuff, more stuff about how women have failed men. He did a thing about Pizzagate.
Pizzagate.
Just hearing him say Pizzagate fucking kills me. Over the course of the pandemic, he started posting more and more videos about how the vaccine was bad, it didn't work, the lockdown was totalitarianism, masks are totalitarianism, everything was a sign of the apocalypse, except for the disease. YouTube took down some of his videos because they were spreading misinformation, and he complained about that. And then he suddenly stopped making videos. Or maybe he's just, mad that his videos keep getting taken down. Maybe he's moved on with his life. Who knows? And I recently found an archive of his blog. In August 2021, he explained what was going on. A lot of it was about how YouTube was trying to take away his free speech. BitChute had censored him by modifying the popular tab so that it technically curates what's visible on the site. Because his videos aren't very popular, they stopped being recommended on BitChute. At the start of 21, my content was getting so much traffic on BitChute that it was beginning to double YouTube, which for him is like 50 views. BitChute has more popular videos, they're going to recommend those. I'll now reveal the biggest thing that's taken place in the past year that's turned my life upside down. My divorce, which of course was a huge shock. Who would have ever thought that this guy would need to have a divorce? No, I'm kidding, the main shock is that he was married. I feel my ex has become a very different person to the one I once knew. The simplest way I would describe this change is someone who now aligns with feminist attitudes about relationships and female purpose in the modern world. I sincerely believe that this largely stems from the corporate culture of her workplace, gradually changing her until she turned her back on the conservative and Christian values that we as a couple were cultivating in our marriage and family. Wow! I think there's a lot to unpack there. Additionally, my divorce has changed my financial situation a great deal, so I now need to generate new forms of income. It sounds a lot like, combined with that and him complaining about the corporate culture of his wife's job, that she was the breadwinner in the relationship, and he made YouTube videos, so he seemed to be taking a break from videos, mainly because the person who did the work in the family had divorced him. And in the modern day, his channel is gone. It doesn't look like it was deleted by YouTube, it looks like he removed it himself, and according to youtube.fandom.com, a wiki which is, I think, a dubious source of information, they don't cite their sources very often, but according to this, his channel was removed in March 2022 due to the discovery of it by the school he works at. He works in a school? I have no idea if this is true. I can't verify this. I can't find information for it. He's privated his Twitter. His channel is gone. His blog is gone. It's hard to keep track of what exactly he does. But that is one reason why people delete their channels. I know a lot of right-wing YouTubers deleted their channels because their job found out. That is a thing that has happened before. I obviously tried to verify this and I didn't really find anything. But from looking things up, I have found an old interview with a guy with his name from the area where he lives. An interview in 2007 where he talks about working as a market stall trader and how his business has been ruined. And in that, it says he became a trader after giving up his job as a supply teacher. So it sounds like he was a supply teacher, and then he opened a stall on the market square in Cardiff, a clothes business called The Only Alternative, which is the most white supremacist sounding name for a clothing store I've ever heard. And then at some point that closed down and he went back to being a supply teacher, or maybe made these YouTube videos. It sounds kind of like he quit making videos because people found out about them. Normally you want people to find out about your videos. So that's it. He'll probably come back at some point. The fascinating thing about doing retrospectives on these videos so far down the line is the story continued. All of these people kept doing things and got weirder and more stuff happened. So it's really fun being able to go, oh, see that guy? This happened. Obviously, Davis Orini's channel got obliterated because of the obvious racism. The Golden One has continued to make videos. I think he's tried to appear less racist over time and does more like bodybuilding and advice type stuff. It's too late to pretend not to be a Nazi. That's kind of a problem. You can't walk back from that. You build up to that carefully. But the big thing we need to talk about is this guy from the BNP Youth. What a poster boy he turned out to be. This is a guy named Jack Renshaw, who his Wikipedia page is Jack Renshaw terrorist. He left the BNP for being not anti-LGBT enough. One of the things he was famous for that I didn't bring up in the video at the time was in 2014 he made a Facebook post about being worried that his dog was gay. As time went on, Renshaw became more and more involved with further and further right-wing organizations that were basically terrorist groups and were organizing violent shit. Him and 5 other members of National Action, a prescribed neo-Nazi terrorist group, were arrested and pled guilty for plotting to murder a Labour politician. The Labour Member of Parliament for West West Lancashire Rosie Cooper. Specifically, he bought a machete to do it with. Renshaw had bought a machete online, marketed as 19 inches of unprecedented piercing and slashing power at a bark. Fucking hell! Police said he was in the advanced stages of preparations for an atrocity where he also hoped to take hostages at a local pub. Renshaw admitted the plot. Earlier that month, he had researched the West Lancashire MP and Googled how long to die after jugular cut. Also, just for the record, the police have released photos of Renshaw's machete, and it's not a machete. It's a fucking gladius who's gonna try and murder a fucking politician with a Roman cosplay sword that he bought online. Seriously, I found it on medievalcollectibles.com. Gladius Machete by Cold Steel. It's the same design, 19 inches of unprecedented piercing and slashing power. He bought a fucking medieval cosplay sword to fucking kill a politician with. Oh, you can get it gift wrapped too, for Valentine's Day. This product was a great buy. I highly recommend this item for home protection or car protection. Excellent for close combat. Fucking LARPers are buying these fucking weapons to defend them. While searching his uncle's house, they discovered the machete that Renshaw had bought hidden in an airing cupboard. The police photo of it is so funny. Like, it was just like peeking out over the top of the... This is so fucking good. And then he was additionally sentenced to 16 more months in prison for child sexual offences. He was in his mid-20s at this point, and he was trying to convince teenage boys to have sex with him. Renshaw asked the child for explicit photos and tried to entice him into sex by offering money, drugs, and pizza.
Pizzagate.
One boy described how Renshaw, using a fake Facebook profile under an assumed name, called him a hottie and jailbait. Well, he wasn't wrong! I'm genuinely shocked at how deep the rabbit hole goes. So, shit. When I made this video, I'd hoped to just be like, these people are a bit weird and have some bad ideas, and these bad ideas go back to a very dangerous place. Keep an eye on this stuff. Please don't fall for it. I did not expect the people I covered to literally turn out to be Rome cosplaying, murder-planning paedophile Nazis. That was a fluke. So the video did pretty well, and I realised, yes, this is a thing that I can do more of. The format works. Arguably, it worked too well, because all the people who I've covered got their channels deleted, divorced, deleted their own channels because the place they worked found out, or are literally in prison. So yeah, the video felt like it worked, and I realised, hey, I should just continue to make these, and maybe even I could do this for a living instead of just waiting for more work to come in, and eventually that did happen. I try and learn a big lesson from each video to try and have a takeaway, but this time the lesson is just keep going. Just keep trying it, figure it out as you go. There's tons of things in the video that are there because the other ones had them and they were successful. The main lesson I've learned over the years is most people who deserve to be successful aren't, and most people who don't do. Life is pain. The universe is ash and sin. So just make what you think works and don't worry too much about that. Everything I dislike about the video is something that I know I put in there for disingenuous reasons. It was there because it seemed to be a thing people might like, and it wasn't something I liked. And the more pure I've got to that intent, the happier I am with the videos, and the better they seem to do. I remember several times in future videos, there's stuff where I'm like, there's nothing here that remotely connects this to anything that seemed to work in the past. This could be it. This could be the end of my career. People could hate me afterwards, and then it did really well. It's like, well, there's a lesson there, so yeah, do that. I'm not really sure how to end these videos, so I guess I'll say thank you very much for watching all of this and for supporting me doing this continuously, especially the people who were doing it even back then. It's actually shocking how many people were patrons then and still are. Like, oh my god. I hope I'm still good. I hope I'm continuing to maybe do good things. I want to do more things. I want to catch more future pedophiles. But I haven't actually taken a sip more than that one time I did for a joke of my water. So now I'm quite thirsty, and it's 11:20 p.m. and I've got to get this video done. So thanks for watching this. I hope any of this was interesting and entertaining. And I hope I have some useful insight and reflections on the video and everything that happened afterwards. And I really hope that frame in the Manners video wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I've been standing on the balls of my feet recording this whole thing, and my feet are starting to hurt. Ow. Having a standing desk is great, by the way. I actually have a pad that I put down that I'm supposed to use when I have a standing desk that's better for your feet. And I actually just put it in the kitchen because it's easy. I don't really use the standing desk apart from to make these videos. And it got really messed up when I had the electricians dealing with the lights today. So I can't use it at all. They were like, oh, this reminds me of when I used to be in the army and had to operate heavy machinery. They had these like insulated pads to stop you getting electrocuted. And I was like, that's from my standing desk for when I edit my YouTube video.